The Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, that's the CRL Commission, is in the process of appointing new commissioners. Nominations for eligible candidates closed last Friday, but let's discuss this further. We're joined in studio by Dr. Edward Mafadza. He's the CEO of the CRL Commission. Doc, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for coming into studio.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
So when we talk about eligible candidates, we know that the nominations closed on Friday, but what constitutes an eligible candidate?
Perhaps let me just foreground the discussions, because this is a process that is informed by the CRL Rights Commission's Act number 19 of 2002. So this act, in terms of the appointment of commissioners, gives the mandate to the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. So that whole process is done by the ministry, and then it will then, appoint the panel for interviews and then take the recommendations to the presidency, and eventually the commissioners are actually appointed. So our role as a commission is to give support to the ministry in terms of whatever information they may be looking for. But that, advert and the process is within the ministry. But that does not mean that we do not know what happens. We can talk to that because the Act, gives details in terms of what needs to happen.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. But obviously it's something that the Commission itself is very much a part of. Yes,
we are part of, because the team of those commissioners that are appointed are coming to work with us.
Right.
Yes, on a daily basis. For the period of 5 years.
So you've now gotten a number of nominations. Maybe you can tell us how many and what it is that you are looking for in those who will be successful.
Obviously, in our engagement with the department, you will find that the nominations closed on Friday, but then today they just had a day yesterday. Today is just the second day after the closing dates. And so you will find that the exact number of the people who have applied is not readily available currently, because they use different forms of, sending information to the department, these applications to the department. Some come through emails, some go through post offices, some are hand-delivered. And so you have to have a cooling period to be able to consolidate the numbers and so on and so forth. So as we speak, I think the department is not readily, able to talk to the exact numbers. But I think in the 2 weeks to come, if that question is posed, they should be able to speak to it.
And on the question of what you are looking for?
Well, on the question of what we are looking for, the Act is very, very clear. It should be, firstly, people who are like South Africans, people who have an understanding of issues of culture, religion, and language, because the work of the Commission is to promote and protect the rights of these cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. So that knowledge is very, very important. One person may not necessarily have, an understanding of all the three components, but as a collective, a team of commissioners, you should be able to have those skills within the pool to be able to deal with issues of culture. So you would need to get people who have that understanding. It will be a plus if you even have people who are really qualified in those areas, in terms of culture, religion, and language, because they will add value to the work of the Commission, because our experience tells us that you need knowledgeable people to deal with these issues.
No, absolutely. But what I'm trying to ask you is, for example, I'm a journalist, I have a journalism degree. What are the qualifications for someone who would end up at the CRL Rights Commission?
Well, as I'm saying, it should be somebody with an experience of dealing with...
So it's more about experience?
Yeah, issues of dealing with issues of culture, religion, and language in communities.
That's quite broad, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite broad. Because in its own establishment, the Commission's mandate is broad.
Yeah, yeah.
So indeed, you will find that they should have that kind of experience. But as I say, if you are even qualified and have expertise in terms of dealing with issues of culture, religion, and language,
or even just in one of those fields, I suppose, because you're working as a collective anyway.
Yes, yes. You need to. You can't have maybe both. If you have, it's a plus.
Yeah.
But obviously, you need ideally to have somebody who has an understanding of the religious rights that needs to be promoted and protected across the board. When we talk religion, you should be able to represent almost all religions, and be able to talk to the knowledge of the bigger vision of South Africa when it comes to issues of promoting and protecting the religious rights of communities.
Yeah.
Same applies to the component of culture, same to the component of language. So you need to have this kind of an understanding for you to be able to fit into these processes.
And the CRL Rights Commission in recent times, and for a long time, I've been speaking to various representatives of the CRL Rights Commission, and they've spoken on incredibly important issues facing our country. And what comes to mind first is perhaps the July 2021 unrest, and the CRL Commission had an inquiry into the unrest.
You are correct. We did engage with the communities.
Yeah.
It's a process that we've started. It's the process through our recommendations. We still have to implement some of the recommendations that we've put in place. So indeed we do intervene because you will realize that something that I did not tell you at the beginning, that our main focus also is to make sure that there's coexistence within our communities in South Africa. Of course, looking at the past imbalances that were there when it comes to issues of culture, religion, and language. Where we feel that there's a threat to peace, there's a threat to coexistence and social cohesion in the country, the CRL Rights Commission is always readily available to intervene. And same to the case that happened in Phoenix. We realized that some cultural communities there and religious communities are threatened in terms of their existence and coexistence itself, communities living in conflict. Then the CRL Rights Commission within its own mandate is to come in and try and mediate and try to help these two different communities to coexist. And that's why you found ourselves in Phoenix dealing with those matters. And we competently actually closed that matter, although we still have to do some issues of cleansing ceremonies just to try and say, let us clean up, and then we agree that we can move on and live together as two different communities.
I mean, in a context like South Africa, and perhaps especially now in the build-up to elections, potentially the CRL Rights Commission has a massive job, right? Yeah. There are a number of polarizing issues on a number of fronts that we're facing as a country. How do you propose taking the CRL Rights Commission into the future? Expanding what you're doing, getting your hands very, very dirty, and trying to face some of the things that we're struggling with as a country?
We are very much concerned as a commission that we're only operating from a national point of view, and we do not have provincial offices where we are even needed more by the local communities there. So in the context of what you have just raised, we always as a commission would emphasize that there should be tolerance when people are actually engaging in communities, and that should be done with respect and dignity, because if we don't do that, this friendship and humanity that this country is striving to achieve is threatened. And the Commission is there to say all the time, send a message of saying we can be different, but when we differ, it does not mean that we should throw away the respect that we have for one another, because we are known for humanity as Africans, as South Africans, and although we can be different in many ways, we should be able to still live together, be tolerant to one another, and appreciate that we are a rainbow nation with different colors, but we are still called South Africa.
And how wonderful to celebrate those differences. And if only it was that simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's the socio-economic divide in our country that perhaps makes your job, for one, quite difficult.
That's true. If certain things are not dealt with and people are always forever dissatisfied, obviously when you talk issues of tolerance and issues of unity, they are threatened indirectly. And so those that are also supposed to play their role in other different spheres, they should do so that, you know, this commission is able to also live up to its mandate with much ease.
Yeah. So, Dr. Mafadza, just as a closing remark from you, you know, you talked about some of the recommendations by the CRL Rights Commission insofar as the July unrest is concerned of 2021. What are the powers of the Commission to ensure that those recommendations are followed through with?
Well, in terms of our Act, usually what we do, we would make recommendations to different organs of state where they are actually affected. You'll find that they, you know, these recommendations come in different shapes and forms. And some will, you know, go to a particular department, some will go to a particular, you know, a certain department, and so on and so forth. And there are those that we as a commission can facilitate to implement. For instance, those that has to do with mediation and creating a platform for cultural or religious, you know, communities to be able to practice their own, you know, beliefs and so on and so forth. We have a role as a commission to create that space and facilitate, the, you know, those mediation in case there are conflicts, and make sure that at least at the end of the day, people are living in harmony.
And is, Dr. Mafadza, is part of the Commission's mandate to also, for example, advise certain government officials on how to manage particular issues insofar as religious, cultural, linguistic communities are concerned? We
do a lot of that kind of work. For instance, if you look at the, even going to, you know, legislatures, including Parliament, we do reviews of the legislations that we have so that, you know, we are able to mainstream them to be sensitive to the cultural, religious, and language rights of communities. So we do that kind of a work. If you go to municipalities where you know, there are lots of bylaws, sometimes they're in conflict with the expectations of certain beliefs and practices. We do advise those local municipalities and say, this is how things should be done. And in the main, many of them were quite cooperative.
I think suffice to say, it's a massive job to be part of the CRL Rights Commission.
It is.
Dr. Edward Mafadza, let me thank you for your time, especially for coming into studio. It's always great to have someone in person, the CEO of the Commission for the Protection and Promotion of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities.